Hi, and thanks for watching another instructional video for CSCI 1300. In this video, we will talk about how to implement recursive menus in C++. To use recursion in a menu design, we will use recursion to replace loops in the function's overall design, which means that we will call a function within itself over and over again unless we meet a base case or a terminating condition. If we don't add a base case or a terminating condition, then the function will continue to run forever. So here is some pseudocode to represent what a recursive menu design will look like. We'll have a menu that will print some user options. We will use a switch or if-else statements to handle which option is selected by the user. And we'll also have to account for user error in this process. So we need to make sure that we have some kind of an option for invalid input. And if one of those options is a selection to quit, then we'll use a return statement to end the function and return to wherever the function was called originally. As long as the user does not select the option to quit, then what we're going to do is we're going to add a menu call. So we're going to call the function at the bottom of the function and pass any variables that the function needs back into itself. And what this will do is it will allow us to keep printing the menu options and allow the user to continue to keep selecting things until our terminating condition is reached, and then we return out of the program. So let's take a look at this in VS Code. I have a couple of helper functions that I'm going to be calling inside of a menu. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to generate a vector of student names to simulate a roster for a class. What I'm going to then do is pass that vector to a menu function. This menu function is void. It's never going to return anything. I've got a couple of variables related to running this menu. For instance, I might need an index for returning something from another function, for searching for a value inside of the vector, or I might need to handle the user choices for the menu. And one of the best things that I can recommend is a menu where you have a switch that calls a bunch of other functions. So for each one of your options. So I have a helper function here called print menu options, which goes up here and it prints the contents of the choices for the user. Once that has returned, then I'm going to grab the user choice using getLine, convert it to an integer using the stoy command and pass it into an integer called choice, and then use that in a switch statement. So I can go to case 1, case 2, case 3, and I have an invalid input here in the default. So notice that case 1 will call another function called print class roster and pass the vector. Case 2 will ask for a search value, grab it, and then call another function and then return an index. Case 3 is a quit function where we will say goodbye, and then we will have a return statement. And lastly, notice that at the end of our switch here, but inside of our menu, we have a function call to the function itself. And we're passing what this function requires when we called it originally, which is the vector of student names. What this will allow us to do is it'll allow us to call this switch statement over and over and over again, and all the other functions related to running this program, as many times as we need to. So let's take a look at how this looks when we implement it. So I'm going to add in some names here. And we're just going to fill in our vector with names. Okay, so now we've got 10 names. So notice that the first thing that happens here is we go to print menu options. It goes up here, it prints all the information. So if I select 1, it's going to print the class roster. So if I go to option 1 in my switch statement, I'm calling this function and passing the vector. I go through here and I print everything in the vector at I. Now if I select 2, I can search for a name and notice that it's going to return. It's going to search the vector for that name, and if it finds it, it's going to save the index and then return the index. So this is an integer function, and it comes back with that, and it tells me exactly where that person is. And notice that I can keep selecting this as many times as I want to, and it's not going to quit unless I choose option 3. So option 3 is where the return is. And outside of any of that is my menu call, which is generating the recursive function, the recursive call to the function. So if I select 3, I quit using the return. So this is a great way to implement menu designs in your projects. So I hope this is helpful. Thanks for watching, and happy coding.